Hey everybody, I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. And do you remember that part in Infinity War, Avengers Infinity War, where Thanos, the purple guy with the amazing chin, shows up and he's like, I got these legion of bad guys who have goofy superpowers. I'm just going to send them as my representatives to go and announce to the conquered world of Earth, or soon to be conquered world of Earth, that it's a great honor for them to be conquered, that the kingdom of Thanos has arrived. And you smash some stuff, use your brain telekinesis to throw some buildings around and cause explosions and things like that. Then we know that we mean this and we aren't going to back down. But also we want to congratulate them on their having been conquered and the arrival of this violent, terrifying, confusing new kingdom. That could not be more different than the announcement of the kingdom that Jesus is sending out his disciples with. There's no air of conquest to this message that, Peter and John and all of this crowd is getting sent out with for the first time ever. They've never done Christianity before in front of people. This is all new. We get into Matthew chapter 10, and Jesus is like, all right, kiddos, it's your turn. We're going to send you out, and I want you all to take this script with you. This is what you're going to tell people. And they get out there in front of people, and they unroll their little script, and they're like, what? Really? The entire message you want me to go out with and stand in front of people and announce is that the kingdom of heaven is near? And there's not anything in here about behaving better or knocking it off with that thing or believing this other thing over here. The chief thing you want me to tell people is that the kingdom of heaven is near. I don't know if you've heard about this, Jesus, but in the past, when a new kingdom arrives, it looks more like the announcement you get from Thanos, a world conqueror, or that you get from Pompey when he showed up here in, the 60s BC. I mean, the new and glorious conquering king shows up wearing golden armor and with spears pointed and swords drawn. They say, I'm benevolently here to liberate you, as Alexander the Great did before me, as his generals did after him, as Pompey did before me. I am here in my glory. My hands are in the air right now, and I'm moving my hips around a little bit like Xerxes from 300. I am here to liberate you. And it's like, this is only really happy or good for me, but you're all supposed to act impressed or else we stab you. That is how kingdom announcements usually go. The disciples are sent out with one that has no force. It has no swords. In fact, we're going to see right here in a minute that we're not even bringing a staff. At this point in the game, you're not even bringing anything that you could whack somebody with. You just have to go out with the message, and the message is the message, and that's it. And Jesus' assumption here is very different than Thanos' assumption. It's very different than Alexander the Great's assumption, than Pompey's assumption. Jesus' assumption is they have everything they need to recognize me as the true king of the true kingdom. It's spelled out in the prophets. It's spelled out in the promises of old to Abram, who became Abraham, to Moses, to David. This should all be very evident. All the boxes are ticked in terms of who I am. Jesus clearly conceives of himself as quite apparently the bump bump to the Old Testament's bump bada bump bump. He is the completion of this, and it should be evident. But the message here is very simple. The kingdom should be obvious. The king should be obvious. And if the kingdom is near, what you need to do should be obvious. Now, in a conquest situation, that's not too tough. If the kingdom of, say, Alexander is at hand, you just look around at all of the soldiers you have and all of your defenses, and then you look at that giant Macedonian army that's bearing down on your people, and you're like, we are going to lose. And the new reality here is the Alexandrian reality. Hail Alexander! Welcome! Without any question of God or religion or theology or anything, that's just common sense. The truer, greater, inevitable kingdom of Alexander is at hand. You can fight against that and resist, or you can just play along. It's common sense. Likewise, it would seem the expectation here is that it should be enough to just go out and say, look, the signs, they're in place. The deaf can hear, the mute can speak, the blind can see, stuff's changing, everything that's supposed to be happening is happening. So just read the writing on the wall, and that's an unintentional Old Testament pun, but I'm going to take it, and do the thing that makes sense. The kingdom is impending. Jump on board with that. But the cool thing about this is that you don't have to sell out everybody you love or that you care about or sell out your own belief system, because here the kingdom is the completion and the fulfillment of everything that everybody had been looking forward to. And it's almost more like the disciples are going out and giving permission for people to believe what their eyes are seeing. Now, we've talked about the 1984 thing before, the George Orwell book, and the psychological phenomena that he's describing in the book, wherein we can be conditioned to lie to ourselves, to lie to each other, to look at a thing that is clearly that thing and be like, it's the exact opposite of the thing I see happening, because that is the thing I need to think right now, because it's what we've decided that we lie to ourselves about. So I'm sure there were a lot of people who are like, well, yeah, that is all the things that are supposed to happen, but I don't think we're supposed to sign up for that. I think that'll make our synagogue pastor mad, and they don't seem to like him very much. So even though that passes the eye test, I guess I'm not doing it. Well, you have permission. And unsurprisingly, some people jumped right in and signed up, and other people didn't, just like Jesus predicted would be the case. But if we flip back over here to Matthew chapter 3, you might remember this language about the whole kingdom thing. I mean, this was John the Baptist's message in the first place. In those days, John the Baptist came preaching in the desert of Judea and saying, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near. And then a whole bunch of people come to him, remember, and it's kind of a mixed bag where the normal people seem to be into it. And they're like, wow, the kingdom of heaven is near. That's pretty awesome. I should confess my sins and stop doing things that would be at odds with what I imagine the values of the kingdom to be, and start doing things and thinking things and prioritizing things that would be in keeping with what I think the values of the kingdom would be. And they got baptized, and that's pretty cool. But other people came out and they're like, no, I'm not into it. I don't know. I don't think there's any kingdom coming or anything like that. And they get into a verbal showdown with John the Baptist. He calls him a brood of vipers and says, your ethnic claim to rightness with God is not sufficient. There's a new family of faith being made. A lot of paraphrasing going on there. And then you remember Jesus shows up. He gets baptized. The whole Trinity's there. It's a lovely affair. And then after that, he goes out. He gets tempted. He gets done with the whole tempting thing. John the Baptist gets put into prison. And then we see in chapter 4, from that time on, Jesus began to preach, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near. That's John's line. Like, much lesser John. That is crazy that he latched onto that. Well, pretty evidently, the gospel writers are holding out John the Baptist as having been from God. Jesus seems to affirm that multiple times. And maybe John the Baptist didn't see everything crystal clearly at all times, or his followers didn't. But what he seemed to see very clearly was that the kingdom of heaven was near. So I don't think we can charge Jesus with plagiarism. Rather, John said exactly what he was supposed to. Jesus says exactly what he was supposed to. And both expected that the implications of that would be evident. It's kind of like what sandwich board wearing street preachers are going for, I think, but way less effectively. When they're like, repent, for the end is near. And then they go out and they yell at people, and that doesn't work as well for me. That doesn't compute for me. If you demonstrate values that are the opposite of kingdom values and trying to reach people with kingdom values, it kind of undercuts the whole message, not trying to be mean to angry, hostile street preachers. Just, you get what I'm saying, which is that the one rational implication that the street preachers are going for is that if you knew the end was at hand, or the beginning of the awesomeness and this new kingdom was at hand, you theoretically would do things to jump in with that and to participate. So that's John's message. That's Jesus' message. And Jesus never backs off of it. Even here just a minute ago in Matthew 9, right before the passage we're looking at now. Remember this part? So he takes care of the crippled guy in fulfillment of Isaiah 35 that we looked at yesterday. He takes care of the blind guy in fulfillment of Isaiah 35 that we looked at yesterday. He takes care of the mute guy in fulfillment of Isaiah 35 that we looked at yesterday. And then the very next passage after that says Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. The message of the kingdom was the salvation message of Jesus. That was it. There's a kingdom. I'm the king. You're invited. What does it look like to sign up and participate? Well, you know what I think. I think the Lord's Prayer in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount is what it looks like to assume the right posture before the king, the right posture to enter the kingdom, by effectively saying and praying and meaning or orienting yourself in such a way that you say, yep, there's a king. I want whatever the king wants. The kingdom is real. I want that to come and be fully realized. You take care of everything. You provide for everything. You're in charge of justice. You're in charge of defending me. All I'm going to do is give away the beautiful things that you've given me, like, say, for example, forgiveness. Huge paraphrase of the Lord's Prayer, but that is a prayer of orientation toward the kingdom. Jesus' call is toward the kingdom. John the Baptist's call before Jesus was toward the kingdom. It makes sense then that the disciples would go out with not a complex and complete moral code that they hit on each and every point at this point. It makes sense that they just go out and be like, hey, all of you who've been keeping an eye out for the kingdom, it's go time. It's here. Here's why. And we'll see as we look at stuff tomorrow that there was more than just things in the past that they were pointing to in support of that. There was stuff happening right there in the moment as well. And so I really can't draw our attention to it enough. If we get this and we're internalizing that thing, I think we're internalizing Matthew properly. Might land in a different place than me, might do something different with your life than ends up making sense to me. That's cool. We can get along just fine. But that theme, if we want to understand the document and then decide whatever it is that we're going to do with it, that theme is one that we really have to focus on because the text focuses on it so much. Surprise, more on that tomorrow. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.